Um, hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So we're just gonna start with like, what are things that I did outside of school? So if you are looking for more homeschool content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and leave a comment. And if for some reason this isn't what you were looking for, troll-free zone, just exit out the browser that you entered. This is going to be a little bit of like part field trip and part kind of like extracurriculars in a sense. So I guess we will cover field trips. A lot of times people will think that homeschool kids like don't go on field trips, and that was one of the questions I actually used to get when I was like a kid. And I would like, if I was in activities and people would be like, oh, like kids would ask me tons and tons of questions about what it was like to be homeschooled, and that was kind of fun. And sometimes they would be like, do you get to go on field trips? Like, you don't have field trips? And so we did have field trips. Some of them were very much like planned and orchestrated. And then other field trips were kind of like a little bit more ad hoc, and we just did them, on our own without like necessarily like an organized type of thing. And they were really fun. So some of the field trips that I remember from elementary school was one, the fire station. So our local fire station had kind of like these like open house days where like kids could come in from schools and different places, and they would basically tour you around the station, tell you what life was like as a firefighter. You got to like actually go into a fire truck. And then they had like, I think maybe like some handouts or something else that they did, some activities. I can't totally remember. And I think we got a plastic fire hat from there too, because I feel like I had this little red plastic fire hat like for the longest, and I had to have gotten it from there. So yeah, that was a field trip that we did, and it was a lot of fun. We also did a field trip to a local farms, Sabra Farms, I believe. I'm gonna Google and see if is Sabra Farms still around? We went to this farm that was nearby. It was actually kind of close to where my dad worked. My mom took me, and I was like obsessed with horses. So we went on a whole tour, and I got to like touch horses and learn like what horses eat and how they run the farm, just like all of that stuff. That was really fun. That was like definitely a highlight of my experience. Um, and then when I got a little bit older, some of my field trips were kind of tied into some of the activities that I did. So like golf was one of my extracurriculars, one of my athletics. And there was a organization that I was a part of where we had like a day where we went to a professional women's golf event. And so that would kind of tied into as like one of my field trips. So usually my mom would tie in things, when you like do things in school and you have to like write a report about it. So I usually had to like write something about my experience or like what I learned. And then sometimes field trips consisted of things that were kind of fun outside of the house that like my parents had to do, but it's kind of like this is like a field trip. So, like if maybe randomly we needed food for dinner or something like that. And so I might be at the store with one of my parents, like in the middle of the day, like grabbing like some groceries or something, or at Walmart, and people would be like, you don't have school today? Like, or are you playing sick day? Are you playing hooky? Like that kind of thing. And then we would be like, no, I'm homeschooled. And they would be like, some people were like, oh, that's so awesome. Like, that's really cool. And then other people, you could tell they were kind of like judging you. It's like, whatever. It's like, is this a field trip? Like, blah, blah, blah. That kind of thing. So, in summary, did I have field trips? Yes, I did. Did field trips to like the zoo. We did, oh my gosh, I almost forgot. Probably, no, not probably. This is single-handedly the best field trip I ever went on. We went to a chocolate factory when I was a kid. Here in London's chocolate factory, which has since been like sold to someone else and is called something else. But it's in Northeast Ohio. It's a chocolate factory. It's been around for like over 100 years. It was like a family-owned chocolate factory, and we went there one day as a field trip. Again, my mom's really great at like administrative things and setting things up, and so they had basically a day where like they were giving tours to like school kids, and my mom signed us up and basically said we were a homeschool family. And my whole family went that day, like my mom and my dad. It was all three of us went, because I think we all just wanted to see the chocolate factory. And there was like an actual like public school group of kids who was also on the field trip that day, and so we were able to like basically tag along with them. And I remember like eating so much chocolate that I had like a headache like later that day because I had just eaten too much chocolate. I also went on field trips to a lot of like talks and seminars, and this is probably going to sound like super nerdy, but I actually really liked them. And so we were essentially in a college town, and what's a huge benefit of being in a college town is that you have access to like all of the free stuff that happens at a university, particularly a public university. We went to see Maya Angelou. We went to see Spike Lee. Oh gosh, I know that we went to see other people too when I was younger. I just can't remember them all. And then when we moved down here, we obviously had like, you know, we're close to like Duke and NC State and North Carolina. And at UNC, every year they have a lecture for MLK Day. And so we saw Soledad O'Brien. And then sometimes arts and like science things, like there were, you know, we had zoos and science museums in Cleveland. So like we went to I think it's the Museum of like Life and Science or something like that in or history, something like that in Ohio. They had a exhibit of the Titanic, and so there was like a bunch of artifacts there from the Titanic. There were exhibits about the people who were on the Titanic. And then it was a really moving thing that they did when you walked in. They gave you a card. If you were a man, they gave you like a card of like a male passenger. And if you were a woman, they gave you a female one. I still have my card. And so it was essentially like a ticket on the Titanic and had like the person's name and everything. And then when you got to the very end of the exhibit, you looked on the wall for the name of your person to see if they survived the Titanic or not. And that was like, I remember that just being like really moving and like really sobering. Like it brought the entire experience like to life. So we went to a lot of educational things like that. If there was something going on at like the art museum, like all of those were a part of really like my field trip experiences. So I played two sports throughout my youth and adolescence. I played golf and I ran track. I participated in tap dancing. I volunteered once I like was in high school, and I feel like I am forgetting some other activity that I did. So I mentioned growing up in Kent, and they have a phenomenal parks and recreation program. So they had pretty much like every sport you can think of, like over the summers. They would basically have like camps for kids to do like everything. And so they were all held at like local facilities. So I would do track and field, and that was at the local high school. And then I did golf, and that was at KSU because they have their own golf course. So I did golf 1 year, and then I did track and field 2 years, and then I did golf through the LPGA USGA Girls Golf Program. So we would drive up to Canton like once a month during like whatever period the season was each year. And so I did that for like years and years. And then I did the first tee of Akron for like the year that we lived there. And then I played in junior golf events all throughout North Carolina once we moved to North Carolina. And I played in other states as well. I played in Virginia and South Carolina. I think those are like the main two places. And then I also learned how to tap dance. And so that was really fun. I loved tap dancing so much. Like, I would like practice all the time. I know I had to be getting on my parents' nerves, like clicking and clacking around. But I really liked that. And we had a class. Our instructor was like a dance student who was an undergrad at the university. And then there were like, I don't know, maybe like 10 or 12 of us in the class. And so that was nice. I loved my tap classes. I think those are all of the, I guess you could say like structured intramural activities that I participated in. And then there's volunteering. So I did most of my volunteering at the high school level. If anyone has watched my like college admissions video, you'll notice that I had mentioned feeling, a little insecure about my service work when I was prepping for applications, and so I started like volunteering. And so I volunteered for the American Red Cross, and so I did a ton of like just different blood drives in the area. That was fun. And I volunteered for it was the Democratic Party, I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was. Yes, it was. I volunteered for the Democratic Party. I passed out pamphlets for candidates at a couple of the local elections. And then, what else did I do? My parents saw like very early on that I had a talent with writing, and so I did a lot of like writing competitions and activities throughout the years. So I um, would always submit something to the Reading Rainbow Young Writers and Illustrators contest. So you always had to like write a story and then illustrate it. And so I did that every year for years. I did readathons for the local multiple sclerosis society. So you would have to like read as many books as you possibly could, and you would track all the books that you read, and you would raise money, and whoever like raised the most money or read the most books would win different prizes. I also would submit to the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, and I won a regional gold key one year, which was really exciting. And then I participated in two kind of like virtual like writing programs. So there used to be this magazine called New Moon Magazine. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that or seen that. It was a really cool magazine that you could only get at like Barnes and Noble or like Borders. And they had this like kids advisory board type of thing. So it was basically a bunch of girls. It was a magazine for girls, and it was a bunch of like youth who like to write and like learn about that whole industry. So we would have like these monthly like meetings where they would basically just kind of use us as like a little bit of an advisory board, but also kind of like what do you call that? We just helped them to brainstorm ideas basically for the magazine, and so that was really fun. And then I was also a stringer for Cosmo Girl. Cosmo Girl is now defunct, but anyone who knows Cosmopolitan magazine, there was a subsidiary called Cosmo Girl that was like a version of that for like teenagers and like tweens. And so I was like a stringer for them. They would pitch stories to us and basically have us go out and bring stories back if we could, and some of them got published and some of them didn't. So those were all like extracurriculars that I did in various capacities over my 12 years of education. My parents always tried to lean into the activities that were available in our area and that were of interest to me. So like my parents knew that I liked, to write, and that I liked history and those kinds of things. So that's why we went to um, a lot of the events that we did. And then some of them were things, that I wasn't interested in, or I may not have known who the person was, but like we did it and it was interesting to me and it was beneficial and it was educational. And then other things were completely led by me. Like I wanted to tap dance. I saw Savion Glover on TV one time. I had a complete crush on him. I thought he was super cute, and I thought it was so cool that like him and other tap dancers were like moving their feet that fast and making noise, and it was just like incredible. Like I've wanted to see stomp since I was a kid. Noise, like for me to be so quiet, people doing things that made noise like really drew my attention. So they were like, well, she wants to tap, and here's these local classes, and they're pretty cheap. They're cheaper than going to an instructor, so let's do it. um and so, yeah, I think it's all a combination of, again, like leaning into like what your child shows interest in, also exposing them to a lot of diverse experiences. So even if they haven't shown interest, like just exposing them to a lot of different things, because you don't know what they're going to gravitate to. And then also just leveraging whatever is available in your area. Or like if you're a family and you're traveling, you might do something in that area where you are. Like maybe something's going on. Maybe you're visiting family and Texas and something's happening there that you don't have at home, like all of those different things. But yeah, I feel like I'm rambling a little bit now, so I'm going to tie it all together. Hopefully this was helpful. It gave you ideas, and like I said, just some insight into what I guess activities look like for me over the course of yeah, my education. And please leave a comment, thumbs up. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you are new here. And I can't wait to hear your stories and to make more videos. So yeah, until next time.